This program is brought to you in part by SalCal Real Estate Connections. Yes, we're back again at the Concours d'Elegance, and true to my word, we're going to talk to the owner of this absolutely interesting vehicle that has such a unbelievable past and history that you're going to find this very, very interesting, and it is just restored to like new condition. And believe me, when you see what this vehicle actually did in the 1960s, I believe you're going to be very, very surprised.
Yes, we have Jerry Schulte with us, who has this very interesting vehicle behind us. And you know, Jerry, I think you kind of know a few things about this vehicle behind us. What could you tell us?
Well, this machine was designed in the 1960s by the Tupolev Aircraft Company, and they got an order in 1964 from the Russian military to build a machine to pick up Russian cosmonauts. And it had to be capable of going over ice, snow. It has to work in temperatures of well below zero. Actually, this is designed for a temperature of 80 below zero.
Wow.
Whole thing starts with compressed air. That's why you see the air tanks in front of the machine. It doesn't use batteries at all because batteries freeze at 20 below zero. And it's a machine which has its own heating systems, and it is designed by some engineers from the Tupolev Aircraft Company to go above Russian lakes, to be above the debris field of Siberian lakes, because they're not maintained. They have a lot of junk in there, so it had to be above the water. So this can go over ice, snow, it can go over swampy area, even over bushes, and it has a top speed of 115 miles an hour if you go that fast. And they're built about between 10 and 15, I would estimate, and they had them something like 20 miles apart, because in those days when the cosmonauts came down, they didn't know exactly where they come down. They only had an idea. Today with GPS, they know exactly where they come down. And in those days, America had destroyers. They had something like 12 destroyers in the Pacific, also 20 to 30 miles apart, because they didn't know where the capsule was coming down either. So they were rushing over there with their destroyers, and the Russians had these machines, which were much cheaper. And the Russian aircraft company is very well known of building the Tu-94, which is the Russian Big Bear. It used to shadow the American fleets. Also, they built the first Concorde. They call it the Concordski. It was flying actually before the Concorde from France and England was airborne. It was called the Tu-144, and it looked totally like the Concorde, which France and England built, and had the same quality. It could break the speed of sound. And this company, Tupolev, is a very, very big company with 15,000 engineers. And of course, it was founded by Andrei Tupolev. He was born in 1894, and I think he died in 1996. And his son took over the company, and it's still in business right now. And they're building mostly the big aircraft, bigger than 747s, over in Europe. They build all the airliners in East Bloc countries, and it's quite a viable company.
Yeah, I've heard the name before, and I'm so impressed. 115 miles an hour this thing could go.
Yeah, the Russians actually don't call it, they call it a chronoplane. So it's half an airplane and it's half a wing, because what you see over here is an airfoil, and this airfoil, you take this thing away when you don't need it, and this airfoil creates lift. You have over there spoilers because the tail comes up from the pressure of the propeller. And in order to offset the lift, they have spoilers over there. But this thing, at 50 miles an hour, it starts flying. When you look inside, it's a cockpit of an aircraft.
Oh, my dear.
You fly it like an aircraft. It has the yoke of the Tu-94, the Big Bear. It's exactly the same yoke. But the most interesting thing is the propeller. it uses the drafting effect of the first blade, and because of that, it has 35% more power because each blade does not have to fight the air.
Yeah.
The Canada geese don't fly like this; they fly like that.
Yeah.
They use the drafting effect. Race car drivers use the drafting effect, and the Russians figured this out. The guy, which I forgot his name, but the engineer, he got a gold medal for the propeller, and a lot of people here don't even realize what a marvelous piece of engineering that propeller is.
I could imagine.
Yeah.
That is such an interesting history of this vehicle. Yeah. How did you acquire this thing?
Well, that's a long story by itself. I have a very good friend I went to school with, and I helped him out many, many years ago to get a Bayliner dealership in Italy. So while he was in Italy, he developed a taste for Italian furniture. And when Russia opened up towards the west, he went to Moscow, opened up the first Italian furniture store there, and then he branched out to St. Petersburg, and now he has 1,000 employees. And one of his managers, his father, was working on these machines, and he was very interested in it, and he somehow found out where they were located because he researched it in Russia, and he called me, sent me a picture, and I said, I take it. So my friend organized the whole thing, had it shipped to America, and we restored it here in America.
Well, it looks absolutely gorgeous, and I'll tell you, I had no idea that that's how they retrieved these cosmonauts.
Yeah, because it was Siberia, and when you look at this machine, it's built for ice and snow. Underneath it, it has like things made for the ice, so it has stability in the ice. But it also is good on water. So the planes are good on water, ice, snow. You can actually take this machine and go towards the North Pole.
Wow.
You can really go over ice and take it over there. And it has a long action because it has 380 liters of fuel on board, which gives you an operational radius of about 6 hours. So it can go 6 hours, not at full speed, but at high speed. It can go for quite some time.
Well, I'll have to commend you on how you keep it. I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous. And I'm just fascinated by the history of this thing. I'm going to have to look up some history myself about it because it's fascinating to me.
Yeah, you can Google this, and you'll find out a lot of information on Google about Andrei Tupolev and all the machines he built. But it was interesting, he built only one boat, basically an airboat, and that was it.
That was it.
Nothing but airplanes. And he is considered the father of Soviet aviation. He is very well known, very well respected in Russia. And Tupolev is a household name like Boeing in America.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've heard that name before, being involved with the Russians. And, he certainly must know what he's doing, that's for sure. And I just add on the history of this vehicle. It's something special. I have to commend you, for seeking it out and doing what you have with it.
Yeah, it's a rare machine. And right now in America we have 3. And they all belonged to me at one point. I have 2 right now. I'm restoring the latest one, which I only got a year ago. I'm restoring that it's like a 2-year restoration. And my first one is owned right now by Ron Pratt. He's a very well-known car collector. I think he owns something like 850 cars from Scottsdale, Arizona. And he has my boat. He has only one boat, and that's mine in his museum.
Oh, boy. Well, that's a feat in itself. Well, we want to thank you for spending the time with us, and we're going to be looking for these things in the future.
Oh, yeah. Our next show, we're going to be at most of the big shows. We go to the Hilton Head show. Next show is going to be in Lexington, Kentucky. We're going to be at the Kentucky Derby in Louisville. And we go to all these circles, and we get invited to all the first-class concours d'elegances. And this is the one we've been the second time to, and we enjoy Bruce and Genia Winterstrom very much. They're very nice people, and we come here and we see a lot of friends. We see a lot of movie stars at all the shows, especially Edward Herman. We run into him everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's certainly the automobile, the love affair with the automobile is still alive and well.
Yes, you're right. And I love automobiles too, but I just got stuck with a boat.
Well, let me tell you, it's a special one. We want to thank you, Jerry. It's been absolutely fun talking to you.
I enjoy being in New York because I consider New York my hometown. I spent 26 years in New York.
So
now
you're...
I live in Atlanta, Georgia.
Well, it's like homecoming then.
That's a homecoming, yeah.
Okay.
Over the George Washington Bridge
Yeah.
last night.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Now tell me, how special was that? A vehicle that went out and picked up cosmonauts as they came back from space. And this vehicle was capable of going through any kind of terrain you could think of. And I'll tell you, it's just so impressive looking at it. It's just unbelievable. It's like an engineering marvel. And I'll tell you, I think we're going to be seeing more of this vehicle in the future. Speaking of engineering marvels, this 1966 Phoenix that was designed and manufactured by John Fitch is really something special, and the history about it is so unique. We're getting a glance at the engine in the car, which was actually a Corvair engine there with 4 carburetors. And we're going to let John tell you a little bit about this car, and believe me, it is interesting.
Yes, we have a very special guest we're going to try to talk to here, John Fitch, who has got a very historic racing history, but you also have a history, John, of this 1966 Phoenix. And I'm sure you know a few things about this car.
Yes, well, I do know. I was inspired by the success of the Porsche car, which was made from the VW. Well, it occurred to me, extrapolated perfectly from Europe to the U.S., a rear engine, air-cooled engine in a modestly priced and sized car. We could make the American Porsche, and that was what.
So that was the beginning of this car.
That was the beginning of this car, and I knew Ferry Porsche, the son of the professor himself, and raced his cars actually. The 356 Porsche, the first one. Some people not very admirably named it the bathtub, which was kind of like the design. It was aerodynamic, but it was a bathtub.
Now tell me, this car, did it actually go into production at all or no?
Oh, no, it didn't. Well, things went terribly wrong, as they will. When you try to do big things, the bigger they are, it seems the harder they fall. Well, Ralph Nader wrote a book about the Corvair, which was The Kiss of Death. The subtitle was The Built-in Dangers of the Corvair car, as though it had been deliberately done. I mean, this was insane, but it had its effect. And the Corvair sales dropped. General public, they're not auto designers, engineers, they don't know anything about it, of course. If somebody says that they are dangerous, they don't buy them.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I lost my components. I lost the Corvair engine, the transmission, and all the parts that was going to be a part of this car in production.
Well, we could tell, John, this car was way ahead of its time. Just like yourself, we know your storied history in racing and your relationships with Mercedes-Benz, and it's quite a colorful history. And
there's a chapter in my life that was very important to me. I was in England when Chamberlain declared war on Germany, Hitler, in 1939. And I was terribly impressed. I tried to join the RAF, the Royal Air Force, and they didn't need pilots. They needed planes. The phony war was going on in Poland when Hitler went to Poland and conquered Poland and so on. So I came home and I joined the Army Air Corps. We didn't have an Air Force then. and I joined it in April of 41. And I got my wings and my commission as a second lieutenant 5 days after Pearl Harbor.
Wow.
5 days. And I went into combat immediately.
Wow.
And was in it until the last 2 months of the war. In May was the end of the war. In February, I stuck my neck out a little too far. I was flying a P-51, and I strafed locomotives, which were the transport for the military of Germany. And if I could blow up the trains, the locomotives, they couldn't get their ammunition and their guns and their fuel and all their fighting materials. So I was a POW for the last 2 months of the war.
Well, I'll tell you, you certainly have a storied history, and we're certainly glad to have the opportunity to talk to you today. And I hope.
I'm going to tell you one more story.
Go ahead.
Believe it or not, I knew Wilbur Wright.
Is that right?
I knew Wilbur Wright, yes. I met him by accident, and I was just out of a POW camp, and I had just shot down a Messerschmitt 262, which was the twin-engine jet fighter, the only one in the war. And he was desperate for information about aviation, about the air war, about everything. He was in his 70s and quite divorced from ongoing technology. So I was able to tell him things about the air war and about the aircraft that he was so fascinated to hear.
Well, it had to be a great thrill to meet somebody like that. And
I can't get over it.
and I never really knew you had the history of flying planes. And P-51s, I mean, that had to be a real experience, just sitting in a cockpit of one of these things.
Well, I sat in the cockpit and I jumped out of one that was on fire. That's when I went down.
That was it.
Yeah, that was it. I was lucky so many times over in my life. I have to wonder what I'm being saved for. It better come soon.
Well, maybe for these moments. Well, I'll tell you, John, we want to thank you, wish you luck this weekend, and we certainly always look forward to talking with you.
Pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
Well, it's always an absolute joy to talk to John Fitch about his different projects, and this Phoenix car was surely something special. But boy, the different things he's accomplished in his life is truly a storied past, and he's just a great person. Yes, we're going to be talking to Tom Cody about this 1956 Curtiss 500, another very, very unique car. I mean, let me tell you, these cars are one-offs. You won't see another one. And it's going to be very interesting to talk to Tom about this car.
It's absolutely gorgeous. 1956 Curtiss. And I'll tell you, this car is kind of impressive, and I got a feeling you know a thing or two about this car, Tom.
Yes, a little. I'm the third owner of the car. A guy named Sutton out of the Carolinas ordered a Curtiss chassis out of California. Curtiss chassis were primarily used in Indianapolis race cars and midgets, but he sports car chassis, and this is one of them. And he shipped the chassis to Denver, and a guy named Lyons did the body work. And he told Lyons that he wanted the front of the car to look like a Ferrari California Spider, and the rear of the car to look like Bertoni's Bat car. And this is what he built.
Well, I'll tell you, it is stunning.
It's all aluminum, has a tubular chassis. Without the drivetrain, you can pick this whole car up with one hand. And it runs like 500 horsepower.
Now, did this car have some kind of a race history?
Yes, it raced in the Carolinas primarily, and Did a lot of it in drag racing, and nothing ever beat it.
Now, it's got a Hemi, Chrysler Hemi. How big is the engine?
Well, it's 392 cubic inches. It runs right close to 500 horsepower. The car, if you look at the workmanship that guy did with aluminum and bend it as fine as he did in the bat wings, it's amazing, because it's hard to do that with aluminum when it doesn't crack.
Yeah, absolutely. Back then, especially, the technology wasn't what you have today,
Yes, yes. It has an interesting emergency brake. It's what we used in the hot rods years ago, where in the brake line, you put a valve. So the emergency brake is you step hard on the brake and turn the valve, and it locks all the brakes.
Wow. That's it.
If you're going down the road and you think it's going to stop you, no, it's just a valve. In fact, it'll stop you from stepping on the brake because it won't work at all. But that's how they made emergency brakes for hot rods.
Well, I got to tell you, I think sitting in this car and stepping on the gas has to be an exciting experience.
Yes, it is. I bought it from the driver, like I said, I'm the third owner. And he told me, he said, Tom, when you finish the car, he said, before you push down on the accelerator, he said, make sure you've got it pointed in the right direction, because you just went by whatever the hell you were looking at.
Well, we certainly want to wish you a lot of luck this weekend, and I just have a feeling you're going to have some fun here.
Yes, yes, always do it at Greenwich, always do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom, and good luck with your car, and I'll tell you, I'm very impressed.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, we have Dennis Jelliker here, who owns this 1957 Studebaker Golden Hawk. And I'll tell you, I don't get to see these cars very often, but I have a feeling you know a few things about this car, Dennis.
Yes, it's a 1957 Golden Hawk. It's a 289 cubic inch engine, 275 horsepower, supercharged. This particular model is a 400 model. They built only 51 of these. They built 10 as a show car in 57. And from the show car, they thought they'd have a good deal here, but the cost was about $500 more than the standard Golden Hawk. And the only difference between it and the standard Golden Hawk is it has a genuine leather interior, a little bit plusher interior than the normal 57 Golden Hawk.
Now tell me, with the supercharger, did it have a race history too, or Bonneville, or that kind of thing?
Not really. It's alleged to be one of the fastest cars for top end in 1957. Road and Track did a road test on it, and I believe it turned to 138 on top end. Did pretty good in the quarter miles, but really not as good as a standard shift Corvette would do in a quarter mile.
Now, how long have you owned the car?
I've owned it 30 years.
Wow. Almost as much as your wife.
Yeah, that's for sure, yeah.
Well, we certainly have to commend you on how you keep the car. It's an interesting car. Like I said, we don't run across them too often, and we're always anxious to talk to somebody about them. And we wish you luck this weekend.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
You are excellent.
Well, it sure was an interesting day here at the Greenwich Concours d'Elegance. The vehicles that we saw today are truly something special. How about that vehicle that picks up cosmonauts as they come back from space? I mean, that was just unbelievable. And as always, we had a talk with John Fitch, who is just an absolute marvel as far as I'm concerned. The things he's been involved with, his career is a storied history of automobile racing, the things he's done with inventing things like that 1966 Phoenix. I mean, you just don't come across an individual that does the things he has done. He also perfected some of these safety barriers on the highways. Just an absolute joy to talk to. And I'll tell you, we covered some very interesting vehicles today. I mean, the different types of cars in the show today were really unique. And also we had a chance to see that Golden Hawk Studebaker. I mean, supercharged. When do you ever see that? And a couple of other those sports cars. And, boy, I'll tell you, it was just one outstanding day here, and everybody should come out and see what this place is all about.
Yes, we come to the conclusion of our show today, and I hope everybody's enjoyed it as much as we did producing it. It's sure been an outstanding event here at the Greenwich Concours d'Elegance, and I want to thank our crew, Billy Majak, Dwayne Cody, David Seilinger, for all the great work they do. And last of all, and most of all, I want to thank you, the viewers, for being with us on Racing Action Today.
This program is brought to you in part by SalCal Real Estate Connections. Special thanks to the Racing Action Today crew: Dwayne Cody, Billy Majak, David Seidlinger, Lisa Backus, and Luis Gonzalez. Also, we want to thank our home station, Nutmeg TV, for all their support.